The ego is the system that runs your sense of self. It is made out of thought patterns, emotions, and behavioral loops, and the stories that try to hold it all together. Left unchecked, it creates endless existential searching, chronic disconnection, and the persistent sense that something is wrong. The goal of my videos is clarity, to see your identity and its contradictions for what they are, named precisely, to finally understand what it is that we're all running away from. If you're running through your life constantly thinking you're running around with dialectic tension, this is a condition that most humans in modern society are suffering with. This is a tension created by the relationship to words and language that other people manipulate you with. It's enmeshed in our current societal structure, and it constantly runs in the back of your mind. Everybody just wants to reinforce the image they have of themselves. And people use your capacity to think and speak to do exactly that. They control your mind to fit their worldview, their belief systems, and their value hierarchies. The version of what's real is trying to be reinforced through you, and you'll likely do the same. If you ever wondered why you or others argue about the stupidest things, that's why. Even something as simple as who is a better driver can escalate into an argument that brings up fights from 3 years ago, because it was never about driving. It was about whose self-image gets to survive in the conversation, and if yours doesn't survive, you will bring up other times from which you still build resentment. Every relationship and every conversation can be seen as a form of manipulation. Every relationship and every conversation can be seen as a form of manipulation. Either people want to speak to you to prop up their own self-image or to get you to do something for them. There's a constant low-level abuse that is happening towards your mind, because it's never about your own interest. It's always about other people's interest, and all interactions have this underlying layer if you're not very close with a person. And even in close friendships, this gets abused all the time. Similar to gaslighting, you get convinced that other people's opinions matter more to you than your own, and you can never be certain of your own because there are always other people's opinions. And even if you believe yourself to be certain about your own opinions, you are constantly in a low-level doubt, in a low-level friction with yourself. If you feel a need to prove yourself and to show others that you're right about something, it's because you can't stand the fact that others don't see you how you see yourself. This means that something within you is in conflict and needs others to be seen to see you in the same light. This creates a doubtful energy that wants to get resolved. You walk away from a conversation replaying it or rehearsing what you should have said instead, building a better argument in your head for how you could have won this debate or positioned yourself more prestigiously in this situation. And it's not really because you are super caring of the truth. You might convince yourself that you are, but it's because your ego took a hit and it needs to repair itself. What is severely underestimated is how deep the consequences of this constant dialectic tension goes, and how the real issue is so ingrained in our sense of self and identity that truth is always brushed aside. Dialectic is the art of practicing or arriving at the truth by exchanging a set of logical arguments. The people present their positions, the weak ones get eliminated, and what survives is closer to the truth. That's the theory, at least. But in practice, nobody really does it this way. In practice, language becomes a weapon. When someone says, for example, "What do you mean by that?" they're not listening for what do you actually mean by that. They're scanning your words for their own insecurities, looking for the opening that lets them dismantle your position and reinstall theirs again. It's about the self-view. And you do the same thing. You just don't notice it because your ego runs this program so automatically that it convinces you that you care more about the truth. So instead of dialectic leading to truth, it leads to tension. Two self-images locked in a negotiation to, where is the one that is most acceptable and can survive in the long term. And often this just means the person who is more cold or callous and just pushes his will to other people. The truth gets sacrificed every single time because neither ego can afford to lose. And the conversation that was supposed to be about ideas was always about who feels more secure in their own identity and who needs to push this lack of security to be resolved by the other person. This happens in relationships all the time, and I cannot count how often this has happened in my past relationships. This is why you feel so drained after most social interactions, because you're not really exchanging ideas or not expressing yourself freely or openly. You're always defending a construct, and this low-level sense that you need to defend this construct never really turns off. If you have an ego that is trained to do this, it is very difficult to shut this down and just be authentically yourself. But the real problem with the dialectic tension is not about the relationship you have to other people. The real problem is that you do this to yourself all the time while you think in your head. You might think about two contradicting beliefs you hold. For example, you might on the one hand say that you are highly intelligent, and then you can also notice that you maybe can't figure out how to fix your own life because you are anxious and depressed. And then maybe you rationalize this and say, oh, it's because I'm so intelligent that I am depressed. It's because that I'm so clever that I'm anxious, because I can see things that other people can't see. So now you lock yourself into constant tension because you need to resolve this conflict of wanting to be happy, but also being intelligent. And when we play with these words, intelligence, happiness, and figuring out your own life, oftentimes you don't really know what these words mean. You're just having a sense of feeling that is being rationalized. And this is where the ego finds itself. Your mind takes these contradictions and then builds a kind of inner courtroom around them. You are the prosecutor and the defense at the same time. And then you're running a trial 24 hours a day when the case really is, who am I? And every time you win the argument, you lose the argument because you're just arguing against yourself. This is why overthinking never resolves. The dialectic that was supposed to lead to truth has turned inward and created an infinite loop of dissatisfaction. The same ego is now used as an entire system to prop up its own self-image when there are two conflicting self-images fighting at each other. So dialectic for truth finding or for your own personal identity finding, if this is the way you do it, will never work. The system was built for protection, not for truth. And if you have two different parts protecting each other, well, now you're in internal conflict. You're alone in your head, and your own contradictions are running a trial that will never endure. Every conversation you have about your problems with either friends or a therapist is the same dialectic tension, and it reinforces itself by the sense of venting. If you vent to your partner or your friend, you're not really dissolving the tension. You are again feeding this need to be seen the way you really want to see yourself. So simply venting and talking about your problems won't solve your problems. It reinforces the fact that the problems are there in the first place. This is why people spend years in therapy articulating their problems with extreme precision and immense self-awareness, but then absolutely nothing changes. The articulation is running through something or around something, but it never actually resolves the symptom, or it never actually resolves the core origin of where this tension is coming from. The stories you tell yourself through dialectics can lead you to it if it is done in the right way. But usually this isn't enough if you, as an instinctual reaction, want to defend your own identity. There needs to be a sense of active desire to be proven wrong, and an active desire to not want to protect your self-image anymore. This requires a sense of immense awareness of yourself and awareness of your own ego and a desire to yet shift and change how you see yourself. This is what I do in my ego architecture audits, because I push people into the discomfort of noticing one's own contradiction. This is phase 4 of the contradiction stress test, and you can see the exact details in the PDF. I don't just simply listen to people's stories. I try to figure out where is the story contradicting your sense of identity that you've built on. And it's fascinating how almost everybody has some crucial contradictions that actually don't work out, that they are pretty much blind to. It is extremely difficult to apply these narratives to your own sense of identity, because the narratives of your own life reinforce each other. But to use these narratives to find out where you're wrong about them is extremely counterintuitive. And that's why usually you need a sparring partner or somebody who actually wants to prove you wrong or show you something about yourself you don't know, and you want to be willing to be shown something new. This is extremely odd for most people to do, so they just prefer to be in comfort and never actually challenge themselves this way. The reason this works so well is because if you can look at your contradictions honestly and you can acknowledge that the dialectic does in fact lead to a deeper truth, but this truth doesn't find itself in words, just that the words are like bread trails leading you to somewhere within your own nervous system and your own experience, then you might find something that can be felt. Then you can find something that is truthful in a way that makes you see it for yourself, like an insight that you cannot deny or cannot rationalize away. This is the sense of having seen something, and the seen is the same as knowing it. It's like you know something new about yourself and you're kind of surprised and startled, but at the same time, the sensation usually is, oh, I've always known this about myself. I've seen this now, and I know this now, and it's surprising and startling me, but actually I've always known this and I've just lived in denial. I've used my own mental frameworks to skirt around the actual insight underneath. I always knew that I am actually a very good driver, but I am doubtful about it because of an insecurity that happened X time ago. It's a very silly example, but there's a lot of ego around very silly things that connect with an entire web of identity structures in your own mind that you wouldn't guess. Because usually a word is not simply a word. It is like a path, a neural pathway in your own brain leading you to somewhere deeper in your own mind. You just don't want to argue about it. You want to follow its lead and then see where it leads. The end product of doing this constantly for a long period of time is an immense amount of self-awareness that accepts itself. Instead of overthinking in the mental courtroom, you can look at your situation honestly and see the different arguments, and you don't need to pick a side, because there's an identity that is even more profound, that has found itself at peace, because it doesn't need any certain self-image to feel validated. It doesn't need another person's image to validate your self-image. You can be completely satisfied by simply knowing what you are, independent of words constructing meaning around it. Because what we are at the end of the day is so much more complex than any word could ever describe. And all animals in the animal kingdom don't use words at all, because the nature of being, ontology, just how you are within yourself, doesn't need words at all to be seen.